Today, in the studio with Rick LePage and his new camera.
Sony A7RV.
Yep, we're going to talk about why he's moving from the A1 to the A7R5 and views it as an upgrade.
Right.
And maybe we'll wax prophetic a little bit about what might be coming for us Nikon shooters in the future too. Well, hey everyone, it's Hudson and Rick here in the studio in Portland, and we're getting ready for our printing workshop and thought we'd just take on a few of these approaching the scenes, rambling about photographic stuff in general. Yeah. And Rick showed up with his brand new fun toy, the A7R5, which I gotta just say, I love that flippy screen that lets it protect itself. And they kind of did one more where it can be kind of like a Nikon Z9 screen as well as a flippy twisty screen. So that's one cool upgrade. Tell me one other. What are some of the other reasons why?
It's funny. I've been shooting with the A1 now for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. It's a great camera.
I traded in my A7R3, which was my sort of go-to camera for years, and sold my horse to get the A1. It was the most expensive camera I've ever bought, and it's the best camera I've ever used. Right. It's a pretty amazing camera.
Kind of like the Z9 for me.
Yeah. And Sony's been coming out with a bunch of cameras in the last year and a half that have some features in them that I would really like that the A1 doesn't have. You know, and you and I have had conversations before about the whole idea of firmware upgrades by these camera manufacturers. And I think Nikon does a fantastic job with their firmware updates.
I would have to agree. I mean, they've really brought previous generations of camera up to as close as they can to the modern tech, including even the DSLRs. You know, the 850 and the 500 keep getting firmware updates to integrate things they've figured out with the mirrorless camera. It's amazing.
Right, and Sony doesn't do that. Sony doesn't work that way. You know, in the last year, two things have sort of happened for me. Like I said, the A1 is the best camera I've ever owned, and it's amazing. But the reality for me is, it's really sort of a sports action camera that can do I can do everything with it.
Sports action wildlife.
Yeah, video.
Yeah.
You know, but I've also been doing these workshops with you, and you know, I'm finding more and more that when I'm in the field, some of the things that I'm seeing on the Nikon side, or the Canon side even, are things that I would really like to have. You know, focus stacking is one of them.
Built-in automated focus shift shooting.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of sort of little usability features that I just feel like Sony's lacking.
Extended shutter speed.
Yes.
Down to 900 seconds.
Right, yeah. And so Sony came out with the A7R5 this fall. And it's 61 megapixels. It's the same sensor as the A7R4.
Plenty.
Right. The extra megapixels really don't do that much for me. The 50 megapixels on the A1 was great.
Yep.
You know, the A1 was a fast camera. You know,
frame rate.
You could go up to 30 frames a second with that thing. You know, and
raw.
Yes.
Full raw. Yeah.
You know, pretty cool 8K video and things like that. But the reality is I don't do those things. And so when the A7R5 came out, there were a couple things. You know, the flip screen is very cool. I've wanted that for a long time. But what I want is a little bit more usability. You know, and the reality is that Sony's going to put all that stuff in the A1 Mark II.
They will.
You know, they'll put a better screen in. They'll put focus breathing, focus stacking. You know, all of this sort of stuff that they should be able to do in firmware.
It strikes me, and we've had this discussion, that Sony, you know, comes from a consumer electronics background, and they're not going to put the PlayStation 4 features into the PlayStation 3.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Until they've sold the PlayStation 4 at least.
Right. And, you know, but it's interesting, you know, I told a couple people, so I traded in the A1, and, you know, it was just a couple $100 for me to get the A7R5. You know, and for me, I've only been playing with it for like a week,
right?
You know, but I really like it. There's a couple things that it's like I wish that I still had from the A1, you know, a blackout, you know, the no blackout when you're shooting. You know,
That's the thing you get used to really quick.
I got real used to it with the A1. But it was funny, you know, I told a bunch of friends of mine, and they were like, "Why would you get rid of the A1?" You know, and you know, the reality is that for the type of stuff that I'm shooting these days, the A1 is way too much camera for me. And Sony will come. I would imagine there'll be an A1 Mark II sometime in the next 12 to 14 months.
Yeah.
You know, and it's going to be as expensive as the original A1 was. You know, and which means I'm not gonna jump to that. And for the type of stuff that I'm doing right now, the features in here will help me.
Well, and you're a landscape and travel and people is your
Right.
primary focus
Yeah.
with photography. I mean, I've always been a little bit hybrid. I mean, I love landscape and travel, action adventure, wildlife. This camera is wonderful in that it does it all. I was doing all that with the smaller DSLRs, you know, the 800, the 500. I never really felt the need for the big, heavy body D5 to get great wildlife shots and to get great sports shots. Big difference with this camera, for me, the Z9, was the addition of some autofocus tracking modes that made it simpler to track motion than the previous Nikon Z cameras, as well as the blackoutless view while you're shooting. Because, you know, I got to where I could do a pretty good job shooting birds in flight with the Z6 and Z7, but you had to kind of, it's almost like skeet shooting. You had to kind of lead your subject and go a little bit wider than you normally would in order to keep it in the frame and be guessing where it's going to be as it goes black in between. And this, you know, it just makes little marks around as it's taking photos. You're looking at a live feed as you're shooting. And so, you know, I would say I don't necessarily need the 20 frame per second RAW. I turn it down to 10 frames a second all the time.
That was one of the things that I realized that by the time we got to the Tetons this year, I was, when we were shooting in burst mode in places, I was 10 frames a second.
Yeah.
You know, and this camera will do 10 frames a second.
Yeah.
It'll, you know, the screen does, you know, the viewfinder does get blacked out.
Right.
Which is going to take a while to get used to.
My guess for Nikon shooters, and I don't know, I have no crystal ball, but I would guess that what Nikon will do is they will make a smaller body that has a little less customizability, a few less function buttons. It'll have the same autofocus system as this. That's what they've traditionally done. It won't have as fast a frame rate. It won't have the 8K raw video, which personally I don't use. I shoot 4K 10-bit video, which is amazing to be able to shoot in camera. It used to be you had to shoot that to an external monitor recorder like an Adamus Ninja. And if it's blackoutless, much as I love this body, I'd like a smaller one. If it's blackoutless and shoots 10 frames a second raw, I think I'd be more than happy with that.
It's been interesting. A bunch of our friends over the last year, you know, have stuck with their Z7s and their Z6s, largely because they don't want to carry around that much camera, or they don't feel that they need all of those features. And you know, almost everyone's hoping for, you know, what people are calling the Z8, right?
It could be a Z7 too. It could be a. You know, I'm hoping they do or a Z7 III, I should say. I'm hoping they do a Z6 III. We're filming this with my Z6 II right now, and I love that camera. The lower megapixels, but full frame, and it's low light prowess, and it shoots wonderful video. And it's a great little lightweight camera to have with me all the time. So
I'm just hoping Sony doesn't come out with the A1 too. A1, I was thinking about that the other night. They have A7, so the, you know, the number 7, and then an R, and then they have Roman numerals for the 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'd be A1
dose. I don't know. Well, I am with you, Rick. I think that for what you do, I mean, the fact that it has some blackout could be a little bit frustrating.
But I don't shoot that much in that mode, you know?
And like, you know, I bet it's not as bad as what I got to play with it, but it's not as bad as the first generation Nikon Zs and the blackout that they had. You can shoot sports and wildlife.
I did it before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
the thing for me at the end of the day is, when I was younger, I had, big jobs, I would upgrade cameras all the time.
mm-hmm.
But, nowadays it's like I don't need to do that.
No.
But what I want, and this was the biggest thing in the end, that when I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about it and I'm talking with people and I'm watching some people that I respect on YouTube who talk about Sony stuff, was that this would be a more usable camera for me for the type of work that I do.
Right.
And for that, it was worth it.
There you go.
So,
woohoo! Have fun with it. We're gonna take it to Cuba.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so Rick's got a new toy. We'll see how that rolls moving forward. We'll see what Nikon brings in this new year. The only thing I really want for is that 85-1.2. I do lust after that new lens when it comes out. I'd like to sell my 105 1.4 and pick up that Z lens. I'd love to have it in Cuba, but we shall see.
That we will.
All right. Speaking of workshops, Cuba. While we're taping this, Cuba still has 2 spots open, and the Oregon coast
will be open by the time this
comes out.
Yep.
So there might be some spots left in that one. That's going to be a wonderful workshop and a beautiful stretch of Oregon's coast, which all of Oregon's coast is beautiful. Fun town, Newport. Lots to do there, good food, and we're going to have a great time shooting.
Yes, we are. It's going to be a big year for workshops.
I think it is. Run over to hudsonhenry.com/workshops. You can check out what's open and available, or you can just hit the link. So check it out. We'd love to have you with us on a photo adventure. We always have fun, and we learn a ton. All right, everyone. So I think I'll probably be in Mexico while you're watching this. I'll be doing some kite surfing, photographing some kite surfing, and then scouting for a 2024 workshop, the Total Eclipse in Mazatlan. Spring of 2024. We're looking forward to that one. All right, everybody. Stay safe. Stay creative. Have fun. We'll see you next week.